Baba, sioni mwanga mahali popote. Yesu, nimefinywa sana. Oh, nataka hii sasa, na hofu ile haiji kesho. Baba, nipe uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Baba, nipe uvumilivu, 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 uvumilivu. Niweze kukungoja siku zangu zote, hata giza kiwe siku 40. Baba, Yesu, nipe uvumilivu, uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Yesu, nipe uvumilivu, uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Uchungu wa moyo ulinifanya nione umbali nami. Ukweli ni kuwa uliposema hutaniacha kamwe, hivyo tu ndivyo unavyotenda, na hulali pia waniwaza. Baba, nipe uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Baba, nipe uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Siku zangu zote nikungoje. Uvumilivu, uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Yesu, nitakungoja Yesu, nitakungoja, 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 ninakungoja Yesu, ninakungoja, 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 nitakungoja Yesu, nitakungoja, 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 ninakungoja Yesu, ninakungoja, ninakungoja, ninakungoja. Nitakungoja Yesu, nitakungoja, 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 Baba. Nitakungoja, oh Yesu, nitakungoja Yesu, nitakungoja, 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 nitakungoja.
A very good afternoon, our viewers. Happy New Year. Happy new month, in fact. It's the month of love, as they say. Karibuni sana 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 to this again new season of Midweek Vibes. We are very, very excited after what feels like a very long break to be back, and we say we're back with a bang. So you can expect amazing things. And Midweek Vibes show, for you who is joining us for the very first time, is a show that talks about different issues where we get professionals to address them. If it affects the family, if it affects your world, trust me, it's going to be discussed here. My name is Jasmine Wangai. As usual, very, very excited to be hosting this show today. Of course, I am not alone. I have a wonderful, wonderful panel that are ready to discuss the topic with us. For those who've already seen, we are taking time to look back on 2020, the year, we say the COVID year that has been, and also reflecting on how can we look forward to the new year that God has granted us. Before I go ahead of myself, I'd like to introduce the wonderful panel I talked about, and then after that, we'll continue. And I can start with my very able co-host here, Karibu.
Thank you so much, Reverend Jasmine. It is a joy to have you back. As she said, we are back with a bang. We are looking forward to interact with you. Send in your questions, and our very able team is ready to answer your questions. Karibuni sana.
Karibu sana, Pastor Charity. Then we can head on again to my right.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reverend Sami Thiga, Senior Pastor at Mamlaka Hill Chapel City Campus. It's actually my first time to be in Midweek Vibes,
Karibu sana.
and I'm happy to be here.
Karibu sana sana, Reverend. I wanted to say Charles, but you're not. Sam Ifiga. It's an honor and a joy to have you joining us today to continue with our discussion. So Karibu sana. And then we can head on to my left.
Hi and good afternoon, everyone. It's such a joy to be back on Midweek Vibes.
Yeah.
I'm actually very excited to be here, and I welcome you all to share this 1 hour together with you guys. And my name is Maggie Moher. I host the show, and I get hosted in the show. It's coolest like that, and we are back, and back with a bang, as the ladies have said.
Yes.
And I welcome you back, all of you.
Karibu sana, Rev Maggie. Again, we keep saying when the host is next to you, they are watching, so we hope we're going to do a good job. But Karibu sana, Rev Maggie. Nice to have you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, that,
I didn't usher you in Karibu.
yes, yeah, it's just the excitement.
Yes.
Not worry. Well, thank you, Reverend Jasmine. It's nice to be here again. I can't believe we are on to a new year, a new
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
I mean, like 2021 is on and rolling. We're in February and moving on swiftly. But it's going to be a good year. I'm very excited about it myself and the things that God already is beginning to do in this year. And I hope you have lots of questions and we can have many interactions together. It's exciting to discern God's will
It
together,
is.
even in
It
new
is.
seasons
It
when
is.
we don't seem very sure about what is going to happen.
Yeah.
It's a whole adventure with God. So I'm really excited.
Absolutely. Karibu sana, Bishop Charles. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Reverend Jasmine, for introducing us. Now, you had shared what our topic is for today. We are looking back and just seeing what the Lord has done in our lives, what fears we have overcome, what challenges we have overcome, and also lessons learned in the journey. So I'd just like to hear. I know we have stories, we have lessons, we have those unique, tidbits within the year of 2020 and also into 2021. I'd like to invite our able team to share some of those stories. You can start with Bishop Charles.
I have many stories. I'm not exactly a storyteller,
Yes.
but I think I want to reserve probably my experiences more to, what I experienced personally, but also what the church itself experienced, because it was interesting to watch in an uncertain season what was going on. Many times, you find yourself as a spectator, only that the drama that is unfolding actually involves you. And obviously, the biggest story is a story of preservation, divine preservation. That's what I would call it. I think we kept talking about this again and again, just looking at statistics of what was happening elsewhere, and what was obviously a very divinely orchestrated umbrella that kept us from the devastation that was so obvious in so many other parts of the world. And it's still ongoing. I think everybody was waiting for things to really get bad. They never quite did. And I want to say, it's not a point of boasting, it's a point of I think, humility. Because it was the restraining hand of God that saw us this far. And this is not to say that there were no losses, but even the losses that were there, every loss is deep and personal, and there are people who lost people to COVID. In a sense, it still followed the normal curve of the mortality that we face as a nation, and even, I dare say, as a continent, if you exclude South Africa. And I think this is just a very humbling thing to observe for me. And I kept reflecting on God's goodness, even when it has not consciously been solicited for. Because, we didn't solicit for this per se. And if we did, so did the other nations. You get. So there is a point at which you just humble yourself and you say, Lord, I don't know why, but you have chosen that you would preserve us. That's also at a personal level, at one point, obviously, we did have the cutoff of the vulnerable groups. Myself and my good wife were, you know how the Kanjo goes and marks X, where you have to, where the road is passing. This was, we felt like at one point, at least as the older generation, we had that X marked on us. And, it causes some fear and trepidation.
Yeah, it does.
You're saying, wow, this thing is not good, but if it catches me, I'm probably very vulnerable. And myself especially, being male species, and with pre-existing conditions, which I shall not mention. We all have pre-existing conditions, including stress,
Sinful nature.
Yeah, and those are real things, and there's nothing you have done to qualify to be here.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I did special to qualify to be here. But I am here, and I'm saying, God still has a purpose for my life. We did many things as a family, spend lots of time together, especially for us who have older adult children. You don't always get to see them. But COVID again opened up very interesting spaces, I must say, to get to hang out with your own and share stories and times together. And that was special in its own way. My wife probably is more qualified to talk about the fitness regime. I would accompany her sometimes, but really as a supportive cast. But we did do quite a lot of beautiful walks around our area, got fit, and enjoyed time of fellowship.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Bishop, for sharing. And Pastor Sam, we're also curious to hear from you. What would you say was a unique experience? I think we have an idea.
Yes.
But would you say was a unique experience that you had in 2020 in COVID year?
Well, I don't know which one of my experiences to call unique, because I did have many that I thought, wow. If it wasn't for how the year had gone, then they wouldn't have featured in my life, as they did. One of those, and I must mention it, is how we were able to bond as a family. We picked up disciplines that we knew we were supposed to, but somehow there was no time for those things, like reading the Bible together with the kids, and learning how to sing songs with them, and just have that family time. And now, because of how things went last year, with the curfews and all that, we would all be home at the same time. It has become part of our routine. Now almost every day we're able to sit as a family, sing the songs, and open the Bible together, and I cannot trade that for anything. So there's that silver lining. But of course, and I think you're referring to a little accident that I had.
A little.
Not little, really.
That's the boy talking.
Right?
Just a little bruise on my hand.
Oh, yeah.
So what happened is, just to keep fit, during that time, my friends and I, we are cyclists, so we decided to cycle more. And so this one time we were out there with our bikes, just trying to enjoy a ride. And in the course of just having that ride, I do not know what came over us, or is it myself? We began like a little race. And before we knew it,
everything is little that is defining.
a little race.
A little race. Sorry,
there was a little race, and one thing led to another, and I found myself, in the air. And then gravity pulled me down really fast.
What you traveling?
He says in the air, they were cycling, not flying, but he was in the air.
And I fell with my hand, and I had a little. Everything is little, yeah? Like a little fracture and bruise on my hand. So I had to go to the hospital and get a cast. It was a difficult time, I reflected a lot about my life
Like, why, Lord? Why now?
during that time.
Yeah.
I thought the Lord must really love me because, I mean, we knew it was a year of pandemic, and every one of us feared for their lives. And now I had just been involved in an accident, and it didn't take me out. You know, I think then it became clear maybe the Lord must want to do something with my life. I humbled myself as I reflected on the accident, you know, who I was as a person, why did it occur. I know many times we don't learn from our mistakes when we don't humble ourselves, you know, and so I just humbly looked at the incident, you know, what had happened, you know, I was overly confident,
Yeah.
you know, I was unaware of my risks and so on. And that's why the accident happened. And I chose to learn from it. So after 6 weeks, when my injury was healed, I decided I was going to go back, but now as a different man. You know, so I still picked up my cycling, but I'm a way different cycler now than I was then. You know, so I chose to learn from the mistake. I think that's what life is about. You know, when we look back not so that we can brood over our mistakes and remain there, but we should seek to learn from what happened, you know, from the past, so that we can be strong as we move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, deep lessons here.
Insightful, right? Imagine he's already taken us there. We're all
Yeah.
like,
He's fundamentally a different rider.
Yeah.
He did take back riding, but as a different.
It's a different rider.
It's an amazing
rider.
comeback.
Yeah.
I'm just out of curiosity. That the 6 weeks in a cast, I remember seeing you preaching.
Yeah.
I think it was one of those emergency times that you know. I think we had lost somebody.
Yeah.
And I saw you on the pulpit with a cast, and I wondered, whoa, what does that look like? You know, just kind of navigating life, but with severe limitations. Because
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't think you were driving then even.
I
Or
wasn't.
You couldn't
Yeah.
drive, so
Yeah.
you had to be taken around in
Yeah.
places, still perform your duty. How was that like? I wonder.
There's certain clothes we are sure you couldn't wear, even, you know, because your arm is bigger
Exactly,
than
yeah.
usual. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was, I think it was a very humbling time for me. You know, the way the scripture says, do not trust in the arm of flesh. You know, I felt like I was forced at that point not to trust in the arm of flesh, like literally.
Literally.
In fact, somebody told me that's why the scripture says, "Cast is the man who trusts in the arm of flesh."
So when it was in a
That's why I
cast,
had a cast. And so, you know, you had to humble yourself and let other people now help you. And even appearing in places, you know, with a sling, you look weak and vulnerable and so on. And everyone wants you to recount your story. How did you get there? And you find yourself going back
Over and over again.
over and over again,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I might say it was a really humbling time, but it was very good for me. I have a better appreciation of life now. I think I trust God also more because I don't get many moments of reflecting on what could have been. You know, at that moment I could have maybe lost my life, but then the Lord took care of me, and I think it taught me how to trust in Him more, and also learn that it is okay to be weak and to have other people help you. You know, and especially as pastors, because we are always in the business of helping other people.
Yeah.
We're always strong for other people. Now, for the first time, you know, I was a weak man. You know,
we're
needing
not
the
good at receiving now.
Yeah.
We want to be the
It is
helpers.
indeed
So
humbling.
interesting.
I know, and I think that those are wonderful lessons to even carry forward.
Yeah.
Wasn't just for then. I'm curious, did you have to preach on set? And by on set, I mean on television.
Yeah.
With the cast, you know.
Well, I didn't do it on set. And one of the reasons is I thought I would put many people in a position where they will want to find out the story, you know,
So you were sparing
Inviting
them.
or they will think they are now beginning to persecute the church, you know. And
I see.
look at that man persecuted.
Yes.
Yeah, so for that reason, I didn't do it. Though, yes, I would get opportunities to preach,
opportunities,
and
yes,
I
okay.
did. You know, in fact, I think a week or 2 days after I had, you know, gotten my sling, I did go and preach, you know, at a funeral meeting. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I got a chance to talk about how life is unpredictable.
Yes,
Mm.
beautiful.
that's
Wow,
right, yeah.
wow. Thank you.
I'm curious also about something. If if you look at the life of a man, they always face risk, and I'm imagining that this might have been one of those ones for 1,000 ways to die.
Yeah.
So how were you able to? What was your drive to go back to cycling?
Yeah. I think for me, I knew what that accident had happened. I knew it had happened not to finish me per se, but God wanted to teach me certain things, you know. And I felt I had I'd learned so much from the incident. There was no point for me to now stop. And having learned so much,
Why stop now?
why stop?
Why waste all the learning?
Why not now take advantage of that opportunity, now that I've learned so much, to apply now the things that I have learned? As I said, I went back a different cyclist. I learned so much about humility, about not being too proud, being overly confident, and so on. And also, I guess just reasoning and thinking through the incident. One of the things that I have always challenged myself is to not be driven by fear. I, for one, do not know how my life will end, but I know God knows. Not to be careless, but I should not try to be presumptuous or preempt so much, and I'm always saying this is an opportunity for me to die and so on.
Yeah.
I might refuse to cycle and probably end up dying in a way that I never thought, you know. And only the Lord knows. And He has appointed the time when I shall die. And seeing that I had learned so much, you know, I thought I will not be driven by fear,
Wow.
you know, but I will put God between, you know, my circumstance and myself, rather than put my circumstance between me and God, because that's what fear does. It puts your issues between you and God,
Yeah.
you know. But I chose to put God between me, you know, and my issues. So all I'm seeing is God.
Yeah.
I trust God, you know, so I can pick up my bike and go out again, knowing that He will protect me,
Yeah.
or if He wills to take me, He will.
Yeah,
You
thank
know,
you.
yeah.
Thank you, Reverend Sam, for sharing. You know, those are deep and insightful lessons that you're sharing with us, and we'll come a little later to see were those lessons just for that moment, or are they lessons that, as we are now getting into a new season, we just started the year, are they lessons that you can carry forward to be helpful, or was it for that period and then you're done? But before we go to that, we have Reverend Maggie over here. I believe you must have had a unique experience as well during the COVID year. Do you want to share with us?
Yes, I could. Thank
And you
so
all
much.
said, by the way, you all gave a disclaimer. There are many lessons we learned.
Yes,
So, yeah.
indeed there are many, but thank you so much, Reverend Jasmine. It's true. I did have some experiences that some are unique and some are just ordinary, but majority of them fell in the category of special. Special because, for example, when the grind begins, you do get a chance to do easy, nice things with your family, and especially with your spouse. So we got to walk a lot with my husband, and he got to discover some trails for me in the neighborhood, and I could walk in them. But one of the unique experiences, which may not have been very unique but special, was that I got a chance to climb Mount Kenya.
Beautiful. You know, yeah, it's good that you
Yeah.
raised that up. It's not the first time that you were climbing a
No, it
mountain.
wasn't,
What
yeah.
was unique about that?
It was unique because of two things. One, the way in which I prepared for it. In the past, I prepared for a mountain by going to the familiar nice trails, like Arboretum. I've done that. I've gone to Karura Forest. I've gone to the regular trails for mountaineers or for trekkers in the past. But this time, because of the restrictions, I didn't do that. I even dreamt about it. I once dreamt that I was at a roadblock, and a friend of mine stopped by and asked. I was now on the other side asking people, "Where are you going?" And she told me she's trying to climb Mount Logonaut. So that's how difficult and different it was for me. But the reason why this time Mount Kenya was different is because I discovered the local trails in my neighborhood.
Yeah, you didn't have to travel far.
I didn't have to travel far or spend money or fuel the car for that or hire a guide for that. But this time, I did go to the local areas on my own or with my husband, and I discovered treasures in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
I would never have discovered that except for COVID. And there are still places where I live which I had never discovered, and I made attempts at those. And I found also why this special is that how my husband was so invested in my training by discovering trails, coming to tell me what he discovered when I didn't go, and then I would take that trail. But
I want it to be biblical. I discover a trail, then I tell her, this is the way, walk ye in it. That's what the Bible says.
After all, you're the bishop, right?
Yes.
And I also know that you must follow a man who follows Christ. So I could follow him because he was following Christ in that regard. Also, I went to the mountain. This climb was not like any other I had done before. It was it was the most difficult climb I've ever done. We did the normal things. You park light, you leave all the baggage behind. That's a lesson for life in itself. Carry only what you must carry. Train well, prepare well, park well, kit well, eat well, rest well. All those nice things we'd been taught.
Yeah.
I tried to keep them. But on the day for summit, I struggled so much. It's unbelievable. Not that because it was very cold, which it was, but I just got so tired. It rained so heavily. I guess I just got fatigued. I got tired a lot, but I learned a number of lessons. One is that I have to trust God. For every step I made. And I trusted God for steps. I would count 10 steps, 20 steps, and trust God to get me there. The prize was, of course, great, and I focused on the prize, but my eyes were more on Christ than on the prize.
Wow.
And that was special. And I learned a huge lesson there. There's nothing God can do. And I know that. I know that all the time. But this time I remembered God was training my mind to remember when it comes to any issue, whatever it is, for myself, for my people, for my family, for the congregation, there's nothing God can do. He can take you there. He will hold your hand. He'll be there. He'll be your ever-present help. Beautiful. Those were amazing lessons for me.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much, our panelists, for sharing. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back to continue with this conversation. We'll get to reflect a little more on these lessons that we keep talking about and see how can they be helpful moving on forward. So see you right after.
A city set on a hill that cannot be hid, and I am more than a conqueror. See, but you have been trying to convince me otherwise, saying I'm not good enough, not smart enough. You're always putting me down, so you never wanna see me smile. But Jesus said I am the salt of the earth, and he says I am the light of this world. So I won't listen to you no more. I will believe in the report of the Lord. Now hear me say, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I will show the world what I carry, to the glory of the Most High God. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I will show show the world what I carry to the glory of the Most High God. Say I don't know why I believe the lies that you say about me. All you do is take away my joy, my peace, my blessings and happiness. I am ready for the next level. I am ready to go up higher. I am done with all this backwardness and stagnation. No more backwardness, no more stagnation. I said I am ready for the next level. I am ready to go up higher. I am done with all this backwardness and stagnation. No more backwardness, no more stagnation. Say this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I will show the world what I carry to the glory of the Most. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I will show the world what I carry to the glory of the Most High God. Oh, let your light shine. Hey, let your light shine. Let your light shine to the glory of the Most High God. Go on, hey, let your light shine. Go on, let your light shine. Let it shine to the glory of the Most High. Yeah. Let your light shine. Go, let your light shine. Let it shine to the glory of the Most High God. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I will show the world what I carry to the glory of the Most High God. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I will show the world what I carry to the glory of the Most High God. This little light of mine, say I'm gonna let it shine. I will show the world what I carry to the glory of the Most High God. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I will show the world what I carry to the glory of the Most High God.
Welcome back, viewers. We are happy to have you back, and I have seen many of you have actually tuned in. I'd just like to make a few shout outs to those ones who've joined us. We have Nelson Tembete, who is also one of our members and volunteers in the music ministry. And then we have Juan Makin Features Production, who is desiring to join and serve in one of our ministries here. That's a blessing. So karibuni sana. Over to you.
If you're desiring to join our ministries, of course, you can come reach out to us on Sunday. If you're here, there's an info desk, there's a number you can call. We'll let you know more about our ministries, right?
Definitely.
And you can plug in. All right, thank you for inviting guys back. And we had promised Reverend Sam that we'll come back to you, to continue with your own reflections from the lessons that God was teaching you in that period. So probably just pick up.
I think the question you had asked is whether I learned anything for life in general, other than just the sport itself. I'm sure you've heard this phrase that what does not kill you makes you stronger.
Is there even a song?
Yes.
I think so.
Oh, is that song?
If it's not there, we'll write
We
one.
can compose
You
it.
can compose one.
Media team, be looking for that song.
Coming soon.
And really, this is what the Bible teaches also. You know, James would say in James chapter 1, consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you go through trials of every kind. You know, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. You know, let perseverance finish its work so that you can be mature and complete, lacking nothing. You know, and sometimes God does send trials in our lives, you know, in order to mature us. It's interesting that we prefer, you know, the quiet life. You know, the easy life, the life that has not been disturbed in any way. There's a certain author that I read, he's called F.B. Myers, who said that the quiet life is not necessarily the greatest life. You know, there are certain characters who need to just be destabilized and just interrupted by God, you know, so that they can grow in their spiritual maturity.
Bring out the best.
You know, so the quiet life, the life where nothing ever goes wrong, where everything is just predictable, you just go on with your routines. Sometimes it's not the best life, you know, and who knows why God even disrupted our lives with COVID. Those who have chosen to look at the silver lining have actually grown so much. I mean, definitely, of course, there has been lots of losses, lots of pain, and we have sympathized, we have cried many tears. There has been that side, and which we cannot explain, and that's why God is God. But there's also been lots of positives, and we have learned a lot from the trials, you know, of last year. And I think God does send trials our way, sometimes not so much to punish us, but to destabilize and cause us to mature and grow. And I felt like my accident did that to me, you know. Yeah, I'm more mature, more, I assess my abilities better. I could say that.
Mr. Sam, we have to admit that those are really deep reflections. You know, it's one thing to say and go, you know, cursing the devil, you know, he brings accidents your way, but listening to you, those are amazing things that God was really doing through that experience. Asante sana sana for sharing. Bishop, I want to turn my attention to you and ask, of course, I'm calling you Bishop, so you happen to be a leader of a church. You're leading 2 campuses right now, and probably God opens more doors for the future. And I'm wondering, from your own assessment, in light of the COVID season, what do you think is the new face of the church in light of the COVID season and what 2020 has been like? As we look forward, what do you think will be the new face of the church?
I think one of the things we need to appreciate, if you want to look at the future clearly, you must have dealt with your past. And having dealt with your past is then to be able to leave that past and walk into the future that God is calling you. I almost feel like the coming of COVID, because this is now the COVID church, we can call it the COVID church, or the COVID society, the COVID world, is like a door was slammed shut very, very loudly. And I was thinking about what God was doing. The text that comes to mind is Isaiah 43, that very famous one, verse 18 and 19. Forget the former things. You know, do not dwell on the past. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Then he says, I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. And it's like God is done with the old way of doing things. And you see, he's saying this is a new dispensation. Almost like wake up and smell the coffee. And in a sense, challenging us in the church to stop doing things the same way we used to do them before. Is God on the move? Yes, he is on the move. Is this a new season? Completely. You know?
Yes.
Are the old methods working? No, they are not. And I feel like that the new face of the church, those who refuse to wake up, transform, innovate, and create, they will be left behind and they'll become part of history. So it's a serious season.
Absolutely.
All of us are familiar with what happened to a very good giant telecommunication company known as Telcom in those early days.
Yes.
You know, where if you were left holding the landline, you know that black big phone that is connected with a copper wire, you were so irrelevant. It's like you were in the Stone Age because people had moved on to mobile phones and lines were no longer required. It's amazing we still call them lines, you know, because of that line. You know, literally you could trace it to where you're connected. But that time had gone. And those who did not discern the changing times were left behind. Today, they still play catch up. And you imagine this was the leading defining telecommunication corporation with networks more connected than any other company in the entire nation.
Yeah.
And then one day to wake up and find that all your connections are obsolete. I think the church needs to be very awake and aware about the move of God in this new dispensation. When God is doing those major moves that involve the entire world, we need to pay attention. You don't want a scenario where we hear Christ again say, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem," you know? If only you had known how long I had wanted to, to gather you, like a hen gathers the chicks, to protect you, to do good things to you. But you were not willing, Now your place is left to you desolate. And you imagine Jerusalem, this was the headquarters of the spiritual world for millennia.
Yes.
And now they were going to be irrelevant because Kenya, Antioch, all those other two cities in Asia Minor would be the new centers of Christianity, including Rome, which was the pagan seat of the autocratic rule of the Caesars. You can be left behind and become totally irrelevant. So I think the new face of the church, we need to start number one, discerning what God has done in the COVID season, and then innovate to become, I think God is calling us to reorganize our priorities, to know what really counts, that God is priority. Technology doesn't run the world, girls don't run the world, okay, Beyonce thinks otherwise. God runs the world.
He runs the world.
And when he says, this is the way, walk in it, then we follow.
Yes.
We don't second guess him. So that we can craft solutions, spiritual solutions that are relevant to our generation.
Yes.
I would like to see a more caring church, a more compassionate church, a more discerning church, almost like going back to Acts 2:42. They met together for fellowship, for the breaking of bread, for prayer, and then amazing things were happening among them. Then you hear nobody had anything in need, people shared generously with each other, and God came and inhabited that space, and everybody was awed at what was going. This needs to be seen as a new opportunity to regather ourselves, to discern God's will, to reprioritize God and the spiritual life, which many of us had neglected, including many of us in the church. Because, things were always happening a certain way. They were very predictable.
Yes.
Now, nothing is predictable.
Yes.
God has shaken the foundations. And if we don't find our foundations in the rock, Christ himself, then we will one day be holding that black phone and trying to make a telephone call, but nobody uses landlines anymore. Everybody else has changed.
It's not even going through.
It's not even going through. Unapata mteja hapatikani. So I think we need to be very, very discerning and change with the times of what it means to be a more connected, a more caring, a more compassionate church.
Yes.
And in different ways than we used to do it before.
Yes.
Because our physical contact is being limited severely. But how can we innovate through social media? You guys are the generation that will keep us relevant. What can we do on Instagram? What can we do on social media generally to still care and love our people in a more powerful and even decisive way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Bishop. And I want to turn to you, Reverend Sam, as a senior pastor of a church. In regards to what Bishop is saying, he's talking about discerning what it is that God is doing. And so I have a question for you and Reverend Maggie as well. What do you think God is teaching the world? What do you think God is teaching Christianity? I mean Christians, during this interesting season that we are in. As a senior pastor of a church, as a reverend as well, Pastor Maggie, what do you think God is teaching us? We can start with you, Reverend Maggie.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the lessons that I feel is being thrown to our faces is the whole issue of change. That change is inevitable. And if you don't change with the changing times, then like the Bishop has said, you'll be irrelevant. One of the things that have struck me is how our churches suddenly became empty. Because there was a regulation, a COVID regulation, that we can gather in person. And that spoke heavily to me about the spiritual condition of the church. For example, when we visited other cities in the West that are post-Christian, we see they were like you called them correctly, the giants of faith. Their sanctuaries are actually empty.
Yes.
And our sanctuary must move from the physical sanctuaries to our hearts. And what I learned that God is telling us to take better care of the sanctuary, where He dwells. He dwells in us. He dwells within.
Yes.
So if that inner sanctuary is not being nurtured, please note, this is a time I need you to do that. So I felt that was very clear to me around that time, that every Christian is being invited to a place of personal audit.
Yes.
Audit your soul, audit your spiritual connection with God, audit your place of connection with your neighborhood
Yes.
or with your neighbor, and understand that though this faith, we live it in community, we need a personal experience with God.
Wow,
And
beautiful.
we must nurture
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Reverend Margaret, just echoing what you have said,
Captures, yeah.
you know that God wants to teach us something about change. It's interesting because we read places in the scripture where God says, you know, for behold, I'm doing a new thing. And his people always have to play catch up. Sometimes, of course, they resist him and so on. Sometimes he might want to take us to the promised land, you know, the Canaan, but we want to go back into Egypt. I actually remember another verse where God said, in those days, you know, I will do things that you will not believe, even if anybody was to tell you, you know, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard. And I feel like last year was like that.
Absolutely.
If anybody told you that schools will be closed, you know, churches will be closed, worldwide restaurants, you cannot move to other countries, even within your own country, you can move from one county to another. You know, you will have believed,
Unheard
you will have thought that person is crazy.
Yes.
You know, yet during our lifetime, we got to see things that even if somebody told us just the year before, we would never have believed. You know, that just goes to show you God can do very radical things. It is the bishop who said that the church has always been dynamic, is ever changing and evolving.
Yes.
And I know that times when the church has refused to adjust and move forward, when it has been stuck to its traditions, its methods, and so on, it has become irrelevant. And I feel like there's a place for us to learn from that. Not to resist and refuse to learn and grow. Not to remain in what was comfortable, what we had learned, what we had rehearsed, what we had become so good at, but just face the times and ask, what is the Lord doing in this season, and how can we best partner with Him?
Yeah.
I think it's in the book of Chronicles that talks about the sons of Issachar who understood the times and they knew what needs to be done. You know, Paul himself will talk about, I become all things to all men, so that by all possible means I might save some, you know, to the Jew, like the Jew to the... So I'm not getting stuck with the traditions. I will not get stuck with my Jewish traditions and so on. We morph, we adjust.
Yes. Just to this.
Not to leave aside doctrine
Yes.
or the truths, those remain the same, but the methods.
The methods of.
You know, I'm thinking about the age we are living in today, especially with social media and the internet and the web. We've heard of the dark web. It's become commonplace when we talk about the dark web. Why is it that we're not talking about the light web? You know, that part does not exist. You know, and could it be that God had to destabilize the church, you know, kind of inconvenience us, so that we can enter into a space that we were not willing to go, that is dark.
Yes.
But we've accepted it to be that way. And people are doing their lives online. And it does not move us that they are doing their lives in a space that is dark. And I would not be shocked if God just had to shut us down so that we could discover this other place and shed some light there, you know, that is needed in a world that is dying because of all the darkness that they find on the web.
Thank you.
You know, and if that's what He was doing, then glory be to Him.
Amen. Pastor Charity, you also, sorry, you also happen to be a young adult pastor here, and I believe you've also probably observed something, and you can say, I think this is what God is teaching me, this is what He's teaching His people. I mean, you're free, you're welcome to share with us as well.
Yes, during the season of COVID, as a church, we got a chance to extend care, as Bishop said, compassion as well. And how God, this season made us, well, it stopped everything that was pertaining to our lives. And it gave us a chance to reflect. And from different interactions with people within the church, you hear those who had not known Christ have actually come to realize that there's a God in heaven. And it's a chance for us to go back to our first love. And so hearing those testimonies of now I'm going to take time to reflect. I'm going to practice the spiritual disciplines of praying, of reading the word, of fasting. I think that has been a beautiful aspect of just listening to these stories.
Yes. Wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And you know, I'm thinking, we're talking a lot about lessons we've learned, we've seen. But I don't know whether you're with me on this. We have a habit as Kenyans of going through experiences that give us deep, profound, meaningful lessons. But right after that season passes, we are done with that and we continue with life as if nothing happened. And I was wondering, you know, as pastors, what is our problem? Why do you think? What happens? Why are we like that? Is it a default setting that we are as Kenyans, you know, as individuals? I want to be specific in Kenya because that's the context I've closely observed to say that. You know, from your own observations and stuff, because we're talking of deep things. I you know, listening to Pastor Sam and the accident he had during that COVID season, I'm like, wow, who would have thought that I would learn, you know, that he would learn something like that? And they are amazing. But 2020 is gone, which the effect of COVID was intense then. And I can already feel us longing for, you know, a normal. COVID is gone. Iliisha tuliacha huko 2020. What's our problem from your own assessment? What do you think is happening? Reverend Maggie, you could probably start with you.
Well, you know, when you talk about COVID, we began with one strain of COVID. Currently, we have 3 new traits of COVID. We have one in South Africa, one in Brazil, one in the UK, and the current one that we know. We need to remember that we are people. That's number one. And I think staying with what is familiar is easier than going into new territory. And especially when we are clear we've never been there before and we want to take ourselves there. Like the Israelites were trying to take ourselves. I remember that the 10 spies that said that it's not possible to cross over because of the giants there and with how they saw themselves. And then they said, okay, if God is unhappy with our attitude, let us begin to go there, you know. And they all perished, you know. So I think there's a sense in which we fail to take stock of our experiences to the extent that it goes deep enough to cause an internal evolution where we reflect deeply, we inflect, then we begin to take fresh action based on our learnings.
Yes.
We stop at, you know, it was convenient how we did it before. How we did it before is we were slaves.
So we want to revert to default settings.
The default setting wasn't good because what God is promising ahead is even better. But we fail to remember that we can remain desert wanderers for most of our lives until we fall down in the desert and you know, are scorched by the sun and die. So we have we fail, we come short of taking good stock and acting on that good stock of taking of our past and how we need to move in the past. And then we are fearful people. We fear the unknown, we fear the unfamiliar, we fear what we don't know. And we are comfortable, even though we were slaves in Egypt and the leeks and onions were from the slave, you know, master, they were still better than what we don't know. So I think we are limited by faithlessness. Let me address Christians, because Mamlaka Youth Chapel, we're about Christ, we're about being Christians, we're about faith, we're about encouraging each other. So we feel not adequately encouraged to move forward to embrace that which God is going to bring my way in the new dispensation.
Thank you, Reverend Maggie. You know, that's an interesting. Okay, and I was recently told we don't know what interesting is. We are not sure whether it's good or not. That's a good perspective that you're sharing, Asante. And I'm very curious to hear from you, Reverend Sam and Bishop. What do you think is our problem? Why do we revert? Why do we long for the default setting? We learn, we go through very profound lessons, but after that, we are back to...
Let me to start with a story. There's this camp that we we used to hold for young people called Camp 360. In fact, it's Camp 360 Total Transformation. So one time somebody asked me, why is it called Camp 360? So I said, so hey, we want to take care of, help the young people, just think about their lives and just have some sort of total transformation, all round, full circle, transformation and stuff like that. That guy told me, no, with 360, the tag should be right back where you started. You go right back where you started. And I laughed. It made for a very good laugh because I saw the logic. And I think that's how we are with Kenyans. God takes us through what should be a transformative journey, but we go back right where we started, as if we never learned anything. Like case in point, the way we do our politics. We don't always, we're not known to choose always, the right leaders. But then what happens is after we have done what we have done, we end up creating memes and, to just laugh at ourselves how we're suffering and so on and so on. And then the next election cycle comes and we right back where we started, We do the very same things again. I think there's an opportunity for us, to reflect. Personally, I don't think this problem is unique to Kenyans. Like it's Reverend Maggie who said, she alluded to the desert journey by the children of Israel, and God would accuse them all the time, of being stiff-necked people, and that's what we are. We don't learn easy. I think as human beings in general, something is wrong with us. We have a heart issue, and unless the Lord addresses it, then we will always keep coming back, 360, right back where we started. The thing about God, and we were talking about this earlier, is that he's never in a hurry. God is eternal, so he's patient. When we fail these tests, he will still continue to bring them back again, until we learn from them. But if we refuse to learn, then we are the ones who will lose out.
Wow. Bishop, we can hear from you, and you can also add on top of that. What's at stake?
Yeah, there's a lot that is at stake, and I want to agree with what both Reverend Maggie and Sam have said, that this idea of choosing the path of least resistance, and because a lot of things that we do are also habitual. Somebody has talked about muscle memory. There are things that you do just because you know how to do, and you keep repeating because you've already learned, and you don't have the tenacity, discipline, or faithfulness to learn new paths, even though they are more beneficial for you. And it's a problem. It's a very big problem. Like, the example Reverend Sam gave is very correct. How can we keep doing the same very harmful politics over and over again? And yesterday I was just watching the news, and I was, they were featuring these two, leaders who, are boxing it out in a funeral. Such indignity, but you can see the temperatures, and that's just because of 2021 is coming. I mean, 2022 is now the, let me call it the lust for power. You will do anything to get there. And we have seen these repeated patterns over and over again, and yet we have not set mechanisms to mitigate against them, even though we know they are harmful. They have retarded this country. What God would have wanted to do with us, where we would be as a nation, we would be miles and miles ahead. But you see, the same thing when you talk about, habitual stealing from public coffers. It's now become a culture. Somebody says it's not a culture, it's a language that we speak fluently, called corruption. And we even have mechanisms to sustain it. A lot is at stake, and we lose a lot. And it's something that we really need to think about and take a serious audit, and then take serious action. The truth about it is that because there are never any consequences for our bad behavior, and in that we can add the way we trash our country. I talk about this a lot because it pains me. Somebody in a decent car throwing out plastic bottles, yogurt, whatever. You're trashing your own country. It's a very mediocre mentality. Yeah, and it leads to a people who do not have respect for themselves. Earlier on, we were talking about how we used to be the green city in the sun, Nairobi. Other cities were modeled after us. Then we turned it into a dump site, and now we would like to point fingers at maybe whoever is responsible in terms of government, but really, we are the source of that trash.
Yes.
So it is us trashing our own city. So at the end of the day, the buck must stop with me. And the stakes are very high.
Yes.
When you also do that in your own spiritual life, refuse to clean up, you know, clutter, until it's no wonder sometimes we can't discern what God is doing. God is speaking, but we are not quiet enough to listen to Him. Because the internal chaos that we have created within ourselves it can't help me see clearly. And it's something that I think it's a spiritual problem, if you ask me. It's not even a physical or whatever problem. It's a spiritual problem. Because until God now opens our eyes to see, this, what I'm doing is harmful to me. I need to stop. And then to inculcate the disciplines that are necessary to help me get out of those old familiar habits that are used to survive or to do whatever it is I want to call it. Then you detox from that. And we understand what detox is. The ladies do it very well. You almost give yourself a new lease of life. And that's what we need, even as a nation and as individuals. We need a new lease of life so that we begin to get into the agenda of God. When you think about what is at stake, again, you're asking well. If we harness the COVID season well, for example, as a church and as spiritual people, then you usher in some of the greatest events in history. Matthew 24, I think 14, says, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached to the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end shall come. When was it more appropriate for this gospel to reach the ends of the earth than now through every avenue of social media? I mean, you tweet something now, and you know Trump will read it. You know, he has time now. You know, he's gonna read it, and that's amazing. You know, you can reach everybody at once. You know, just by a little touch on a handheld phone, and so imagine the potential for doing good. You've talked about, you know, where is the bright web? We know the dark web. Where is the bright one? And who is holding those gadgets? If it is us believers with that, we can actually usher in the end, you know, where the gospel is heard to the ends of the earth. And we bring glory to God. So there's great potential. The stakes are extremely high, but we need to declutter. We need to get in sync with what God is doing and not be so caught up with the chaos around us and around our whatever. And of course, it begins with us in the church.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing. That's indeed insightful. It's true. We are at the risk of being like the Israelites, you know, a journey that was supposed to be very short. But if we don't take time to pause and actually process these lessons that you're talking about, we will be stuck there forever and ever. And Bishop, I think you mentioned and said, we will actually even miss out on what God wants to do in your life because you're not taking time to learn from what He's teaching you. So again, thank you for those insightful and profound lessons and for making time to come and share with us. And that brings us to the end of our show today. I hope you've been blessed and encouraged by it. So stay safe, have a very great week, and see you next week. Same time, same place. God bless.